Hello there, everybody, and welcome to Codebase Alpha. We're broadcasting you from orbit around this X1, just beyond the event horizon, another location near Birmingham. So, welcome to the stream. It's my first proper stream. Done a couple of tests up until now. I really need some reports on audio and video quality. I think all new kit, a brand new PC streaming, a brand new microphone. Don't know if it's set up correctly. So if I could have some reports back, please, on the audio, especially if it's clipping. I've got noise gates and things going, so I'm having to learn all about this kind of stuff. And also, I'm also learning how to think, speak, and code at the same time. So, well, Gareth, you're alive. Well done. Glad you're still alive, because I'm a bit worried about you. I've stopped streaming for quite a while, so it's really, really good to see you back on the air. Back. So, as I say, this is the first the proper stream for Codebase Alpha. We had to do a couple of test streams earlier, but doing a bit of work on the bot. We do have a bot in the channel at the moment. If you want to know what you can do, then exclamation point help will give you the following commands that we've got. So we've got a number of interesting commands there, which a lot of people probably won't find very interesting, but I enjoyed coding them. Actually, originally for my Slack bot, and so they were more geared towards my development team. But there's some interesting ones in there. The ask command is probably the most interesting. That's all linked into artificial intelligence and cognitive services on Azure, and it's supposed to be able to answer any question you can ask. Feel free to give it a go. It does have a quite aggressive cooldown on it for non-mods, and obviously not. So our noise gate is clipping. Thank you very much for that. Let's see about that. It's not bringing me in when I'm coming loud enough. Is that any better, Gareth? I'll just talk for a bit because I'm quite good at talking, I guess, and it's yeah, the talking bit is quite hard. So I'll just chatter on for a while. As I was saying, we've got this ask command, which is linked up with cognitive services, so you can ask any questions you like. So Gareth, if you'd like to ask a question, think of anything you want, and you'll probably fool it the first time you try it, but give it a go. Exclamation point ask, followed by your question, and it will cool down for 10 minutes after you've used it, but give it a go. Yes, programming and talking at the same time, very difficult. That's what I'm finding. So normally I can talk quite well when I'm working through something with one of my guys on live share or face-to-face and doing some pair programming. But this is slightly more challenging, which is why for our first episode I've chosen a relatively safe subject, which is to create a web API using .NET Core. So as we intended to be a beginner-friendly stream, I didn't want to dive into kind of complicated things. I'm going to keep things fairly simple, not do a very long stream, and also I'm going to be using the menus and a mouse and the UI, pretty much everything, because I don't want to get confuse people with with shortcuts or that kind of thing, keys and key mappings. So this is a fresh install of Visual Studio Community Edition. It's completely free, so you can download it from Microsoft and install it, and you'll be able to play to your heart's content and follow along if you need to. You could also use Visual Studio Code if you felt like it. I use that quite a bit for JavaScript type things when I'm playing around with things like Vue.js, but I prefer to work in a proper IDE. Other people prefer to use less involved and complex tools. I'm quite pleased now because with my new PC, I'm actually getting some kind of responsiveness from Visual Studio, whereas on my old PC, which wasn't very powerful at all, it was quite a pain to use. So what I'd like to do really is kick off with creating a new project. We're going to build a .NET Core web application. Here it is, so web application. So yeah, go into File, New. In your list of new projects, you want to find .NET Core and then the ASP or web application. So let's give it a name now. So we want to place the D drive. So actually running an SSD for the very first time at home, getting quite interesting to use that. So quick, and I'm not getting a lot of lag on the hard disk like I used to. So there's a bit more clipping as I go. Let's just see if we can adjust this noise gate a little bit more. Not that. Right, I'll bit closer to the microphone as well. So I've noticed this blue snowball, you have to be relatively close. So I've just adjusted the noise gate slightly there, so keep me informed if I'm still having issues with clipping. Hopefully this will be recorded and I'll be able to play it back and get some insight into the performance of it. So let's call this web app, and we'll call it web API rather. We'll just create it directly. We won't add its source control at this stage, so I'll do some Git work with it later on and we'll put it up on Git. So the next thing it's going to ask us to do is choose what kind of project we want to run with ASP.NET Core. We're going to choose the API project. We're going to leave it configured for HTTPS because that's going to be important. We're going to be doing authentication, and we're going to be using JWT bearer tokens for authentication, and we're also going to put some claims in there so we can have some authorization going on. Okay, good. So it's good report there from the audio. Yeah, so blue mics want to be right next to the mouth. Yes, I've heard this. I've got one of these extensible arms, so I can move it closer. So let's try moving a little bit closer. Just that it's relatively uncomfortable to lean over and speak into the mic at the same time. So anyway, we're going to choose this API project type here. You can see we're doing .NET Core and we're running ASP.NET Core 2.2. So I did a fresh install this evening of all my software on this PC, and we've got the latest build of 2.2. Okay, so we're not going to be using authentication per se from .NET Core in this project. We're going to be using bearer tokens. So there's a number of approaches we can take to authentication and authorization in a web API. One of them would be something like Identity Server 4. But in this broadcast, I wanted to do something which is relatively standalone, which we can install purely through NuGet packages and a bit of coding. So we're going to keep it relatively simple. It's a username password type of arrangement, and then a token which you get issued, and it lasts a certain span of time which you can define. So we'll get to that in a minute. We need to actually just create our project. So let's get Web API project started. Now, kind of templating out a basic API for us. You can see what we've got. We're going to do a build just to bring in any dependencies which it needs, which it will have some. And the first thing I want to show you really is that if you're used to not using a full framework, when we come to .NET Core, the CS_proj file, which is this web API here, is actually editable and safe to edit. So we can look at it here, and it's relatively simple. They've simplified it massively since the full framework, and these package references here are basically the NuGet packages which have been brought in. So we've got the ASP.NET Core app and also the Razor design pages. So that's all. Oh, we got Pure Sable. Thank you for following and welcome to the channel. This is my first proper stream, so it's all going to be a bit rough and ready. So do bear with me. Really appreciate the follow then. So we're kind of heading towards our goal of 50 followers to try and get towards getting the VIP status and things like that. So thank you very much. Okay, so as I was saying, these package references here pretty much like the package file we used to have in full framework that manages the NuGet packages. So actually, we can enter these references directly into this file and do a build. It will go out to NuGet and grab the files for us. Okay, so we've got our basic file system here. So what we're going to need to do now is bring in a few support packages. So we're going to be building a web API. It's going to be using JSON, so we're going to need a JSON library to help us work with that. So a Newtonsoft.json is pretty much ubiquitous, so we're going to bring that in. If you've not brought a NuGet package in before, then you right click on your project and just navigate down to NuGet packages, and you get the ability to browse through to find what you need. So we're going to do a browse. We're going to look for Newtonsoft, and here it is. It's a massive number. 188 million downloads. I mean, that's absolutely amazing, isn't it? Bring that in. Certainly very popular. And what we can see is that on our project file, if we go and edit that again, Minxie Rose, thank you very much for the follow. Very nice to have you join. Thank you very much, Minxie. It's a pretty nerve-wracking experience, a first stream. I'm sure Gareth went through it all when he started. He's completely relaxed and chilled out these days on his stream, but not quite for me. I'm still pretty nervous. So here we are. We've got our Newtonsoft library, and so you can see it's put that reference in the CSproj file, which is slightly different from how things used to work in full framework. So we're also going to do some logging. So we're going to need a logging package, and I mean I use nlog for most things, but in .NET Core, what I tend to do is use Serilog, and we're going to use that today. So Serilog is quite a nice little logging package, and it's once again it's a bunch of NuGet packages. So here we have the main one, is the Serilog package. We're going to need that. What we actually want is the Serilog ASP.NET Core package. So let's find that. Sometimes you can be misled slightly by this browsing, so you got to be careful that you don't choose the wrong download. So here we have Serilog.ASP.NET Core. That's the one we want. So we'll bring that down. Now, how these login packages work, you also need what's called a sink. You need a place for your logs to actually write to. So what we're going to do is bring in one of these sync files. So we need we're just going to be logging to file. So if we put sync in here, should be able to find a file sync. Not file at the end. See what happens. That's not right. We syncs. Nice syncs. There we go. That's a Serilog syncs file package to bring that in as well. Get the licenses, and that's gonna be enough for now. We'll bring some more packages in a bit later on. So once you've brought in your Serilog, you're going to need to actually start to use it. And the way I tend to use Serilog is to actually set a static up in the program file. So if we go into program, now you'll notice this looks very much like a console app, and in fact ASP.NET Core web applications are just console apps. So it's quite interesting that we've come back to using console apps, and it simplifies a lot of your thinking about how all this works. The drink. Okay. So we're going to start off with up here in the main. We're going to create a log reference. So we're going to need to bring in some. So we're going to use Serilog. So you know, we've got these squiggles, and we got a light bulb that appears. If we hover over it, a light bulb appears over here, and this gives you some clues and quick actions. So here we have using Serilog, and then we get our log symbol here. So this is the Serilog log class that we've static. So we're now just going to create a new logger. So we want a logger configuration. So we're going to tell it where to get all its information. Yeah, typing and speaking is interesting as well. So we're going to create a new logger configuration, and this is one of these. Oh, Jeffrey Huntley, thank you so much. I really appreciate the follows. Oh yes, font size. Yes, I did. Yes, I had all kinds of things set up in my previous test streams to customize the environments with little kind of files which I could switch between. But obviously, because this is a brand new PC, only turned up today, then I've had a little more difficulty in getting things actually. So where are we? Fonts. Increase that to 16. I did mean to do that before I started. Okay, so tech issues of streaming, Minxie Rose. Yes, very, very much so. There's just a lot to think about. In fact, about 2 minutes before I was due to start streaming, I realised that the bot wasn't running because my user secrets file is on a different machine. So I had to rush upstairs, boot up a laptop, pull off the user secrets, and then load them onto this machine. So we wouldn't have a bot running if it wasn't for the fact that I just about managed to get up there in time and get that file so we could have the bot running. Okay, so you can set all kinds of things in this configuration. They can be in a file, or we can do them here. I like to set a minimum level of logging to debugging when we're starting out, so we can do that. So minimum debug level, and we can have we're going to enrich the data. So what we can do is we can make it kind of include a lot more information by having an statement here. So we're going to bring some log context. Yes. We're going to enrich the log file from the log context, and we're going to now write it out to file. So we're going to write to, and then we're going to put in write to a file, of course, as we put the file sync in, and now we can simply file path. So for the moment, I'm going to just hard code this. We could have all this from app settings, but I'm going to just hard code that file, that location, and we're going to a file which starts with the word log hyphen, and it's going to have the date, and it's going to do that for us. We can also set some. We can make this a rolling log if we want to. So we're going to do that so that we get a new one each day. So we're going to set a rolling interval up here of daily. So it's going to roll over every day. And the final thing we need to do is to actually create the logger. We wrap the command up. This is one of those fluent interfaces where we set a whole bunch of stuff up first. Let's just tidy that up and get that dot looking nice in the right place. We kind of set a load of configuration up, and then we actually create a logger at the end of that. And what we can do then is simply log a piece of information. Say log.information. Is the kind of level of logging that we're going to be doing. Is simply just testing that we're actually getting something in the logs. Starting up web API. See that amongst all the other stuff that gets logs. So I've got a squiggly here. What's this squiggly all about? The file. Hey, let's see. Okay. Okay, that's what's going wrong here. So the name of the parameter we're actually going. So we're actually telling you what we're actually filling in there. So it's the rolling interval. So this is simply saying this is the name of the parameter we're setting. So to tax in there, but there's probably quite a few ways of writing the constructor the right to file. So this is clarifying to it once. Okay, so what we need to do next is you can see that when we're actually calling the main, one of the things it does is call this create web host builder, and then builds and then runs a web host. So this is going to do most of the work. What all we need to do is here is add in here, asking it to use Serilog as well. So as well as starting up the use startup, which means it's going to use the startup class, which is living over here, which we're in at the moment. It's also going to call the use Serilog and login for. Okay, so let's do that a quick build of that just to make sure. Okay, now it suggests doing a build. Okay, so we've got our Serilog configured. What we want to do next is have a look at the startup file. Here we are. Okay, so we're going to need some settings to do what we need to do. So we're going to need to bring in configuration. The configuration is set up here. Kind of losing my train of thought slightly because it's quite a lot to think about in what we're going to do. So I think what we'll do first is run up. So we've got a controller here, a values controller, and you can see here that got a few of the HTTP verbs set up. So what we can do is have a look and see if we can actually get a response out of this. Let's try running it up. Do a build and run. Okay, so when we've navigated to API values, you can see we've a response here, and that is simply this response. When we go to this location and we instigate a get, then we get value 1, value 2, and according to this, if we give it an ID, then we're going to get word value back. So let's try that. We do get the value. So the actual API is working. Control Shift B. What's that, Gareth, please? I'm not really one for the keyboard shortcuts. Control Shift B, is that? Oh, it's a build. Okay, so I was trying not to use the keyboard shortcuts too much on the stream, as I wanted to make it beginner friendly, so that people just starting out with the tools can actually follow along and and not get confused. I mean, eventually I'll get something like, there's something called Karnak, I think, isn't there, as well? Zooming in the browser, sure. Yeah, we'll come to that in a moment. We're not going to stay looking at the browser just for now. Okay, so right. So the next thing we want to look at is actually coding up our actual API we want to create. So what I plan to do is to actually use this to read a database eventually, but we're not going to look into a database in the first instance. We're just going to kind of mock up some data to return. We want a model for the data that we're going to return. So I'm going to create a folder in here for models. Model. And in here we're going to create a class. And the class is going to be launches. So what we're going to do is bring back some information about rocket launches that are coming up. So we're going to keep it quite simple to begin with. So the kind of thing we need to know when we ask about, we want an API that will tell us what space launches are due in the near future. We're going to want to know what the rocket is that's being launched. So we're going to create a string of launch vehicle. And this is showing you automatic is that net. What this has created is rather than having to actually manually build the backing fields for properties, is how we can actually create them in a single line. Just the get set creates the getter and setter for us in the background, and we have a property that we can access. Then we want to know the launch provider. So we're going to have another string. So the launch provider are people like SpaceX. Again, find our property. Now there are shortcuts to do all this kind of thing. I'm clipping. Am I okay? So I'm just going to move a little closer to the microphone because that's probably what's causing the problem. I'm just going to move it slightly. So it's all valuable information. Thank you very much for reporting back on the clipping, because I know that Gareth, you had similar problems with clipping, and you had a headset with a boom mic attached. I did think of that, but I wasn't really. The problem is that I was using a headset for the test streams, and it was really bad. And I don't really know enough about headsets to actually purchase a good one. And I knew these blue microphones were pretty good, so I went for those. But I couldn't afford the Yeti, not with having spent quite a little bit more than I expected on the PC. I've gone for the cheaper Snowball to begin with. It's a nice looking microphone. It was very sensitive, so that's why I've been playing with the noise suppression and the noise gates. So it will take me a little while, I think, to get all these settings correct and to get my actual position in front of the microphone sorted. But this is a learning experience for me, and so I really do appreciate your feedback. Okay, so we got a launch provider, SpaceX, United Launch Alliance, etc. And we're going to need to have a date. So what we'll do first, though, we'll have a mission. We'll actually say what the mission is going to be. Another string going to be mission. What I'm going to have to do, I think, is to try and learn the touch type a bit better, because I'm pretty much a two-fingered typist, and a lot of my colleagues at work are very good typists, but I never bothered to learn, and I built up some speed simply by just using two fingers, and it's a bit yeah, it's a bit embarrassing when other people we'll call it the launch date. There is a technical term for it, but we won't get into overcomplicated things yet. So that's a date. We're not going to make a string date time. That's our simple model. So we're going to expand this in the next stream. We start to type back to a database and make it user friendly. The moment it's going to bring back, actually it's going to be, it's not really launches, is it? It's launch. Let's just do a quick rename of that. Launches will be more than one. Just call it launch for now. The studio to rename that for us. Okay, so that's going to be our model that we're going to use. So let's go back up to values controller here, and we're going to rename that as well. Call it that the launch controller. At the moment, we're going to get back a single launch. That should be sufficient for our demonstration needs, and we're going to get rid of all of these. Going to the getter for not going to do an awful lot into. In terms of other types of using other HTTP verbs just yet, so we're going to be using a post when we actually go and request a bearer token. We should get to relatively soon. Okay. So the other thing I want to do is in this project is actually bring in Swagger. If you don't know what Swagger is, go and have a look at Swagger. It's a way of documenting your web API, and it's really nice because it also provides a test, kind of a test bed for you sending messages to your web API. So here's the Swagger site. It's really simple to include a Swagger documents into your web API. So check out swagger.io for more details, but we're just going to bring that in. So once again, we're going to go up to managing our NuGet projects, and you want to bring in Swagger. And that's a bit confusing because the package isn't called Swagger; it's called Swashbuckle. I don't know why. I think it's because Swashbuckle is the actual package and it provides Swagger. So we want the ASP.NET Core version of it. So if we put in ASP.NET Core, we should find the Swashbuckle ASP Core, and then we've got the Swagger going to bring in. It's one of the dependencies. So let's install that. Comes a bit more work for it to do to install this. Fairly soon. So if we go once again, we can go and have a look at our project here. So we're going to now we've got the main ASP core package in. We're going to need to bring in the actual Swagger packages. Okay. Come in. Check. Yep, that's there. Okay, so we brings all those packages. Okay, so we need to include some information, bring in. Got the Swagger NuGet DLLs basically in our project now. What we're going to need to do is actually configure that, and we do this kind of configuration in our startup. So here's our startup file. Okay, so with Swagger, we configure it within this service as a service. So you can see here we've got our configure services method. So this is we're going to be adding services to our dependency injection container. In order to do that, we need to register the Swagger generator. So the Swagger generator is what's going to create our documents. So it can create more than one type of document, but we're just going to create our API documentation. If I bring up the services object here, one of the things we can add to this is we can add Swagger. Find it. There we go. Add Swagger Gen. In fact, it's okay. And here we just put a nice little lambda expression in here. Come on. Oh, that's a classic brought up calculator. How many times do you? What? Start a object here. Let's just close that off there. We're going to create a Swagger doc. We need to give it some parameters. So the first thing we need to give it is kind of a name, and normally what we do is give it a version. This is just version 1. Then the next thing we need is some Swagger information. So one of these info type objects here. So we're going to create a new info object. New info, and as it's an object, we need to obviously fill that in. So an information object has a title, and we're going to call this simply a string web API. Not a very imaginative name, I know. And we need a version, which is going to be version v1 again. So that v1 here is simply a name of the document. I've just called it v. Simple thing. Relatively descriptive. It's going to be the first version of our documentation. You can create different types of documentation if you. Okay, so let's just close off that. Okay, so that's our Swagger document, and then down in the configure method, this is what gets called by the runtime. So this is basically building our pipeline. A pipeline of the HTTP requests are going to come through and filter through all these statements here, and eventually they're going to be rendered and then go back down the pipeline and come out to the browser. We're going to just the app object to use Swagger. And we also want to we need also the UI. So Swagger will generate a JSON file for us, and that is defined by the Swagger UI. So we also need to do the app. You can notice there's a use Swagger UI here. Use that. Once again, we need to do some configuration. So C for config. Again, let's just close off that. We don't forget. Now we need an endpoint. The Swagger endpoint we're going to define. We're going to put that at so death packs. Are you not hearing any audio? Has my audio stopped? clipping issues again. Sorry, I was kind of heads down doing this coding and didn't notice. So let me try and adjust myself a bit more. Okay, so I'm going to carry on now. No, audio's fine. Okay, so no clipping for death packs. It could be that I'm kind of moving around a bit in my seat, and that's why some people are getting some clipping. But I'll carry on with these levels. If anyone gets any more clipping, give me a shout. And we've got 13 followers. 13 is a very unlucky number. You don't fancy throwing me a follow, do you, death pack? So I'm not stuck on 13 followers. That feels a bit feels a bit unlucky. Anyway, so let's get back to this. So yeah, I do think it's going to be quite difficult to actually for me to recognise when this is going on. So I'll listen back to the recording that Twitch is keeping for me. Hopefully I'll be able to identify the points and try and remember where I was when that clipping was happening. And I'll just have a play around off stream. I'll just try and move this a little bit closer. Stable. You don't hear anything. Thank you. You heard my voice. That's the main thing, isn't it? So, oh, thank you very much, Mighty Drill. That's very, very kind of you to get me off that dreaded 13 followers. I was a bit concerned that we were stuck with the stream on 13 followers, and that's. I'm a bit superstitious in that respect. I think it's just roomies tend to be a bit super. Don't walk onto ladders or anything like that. Okay, so we're going to just define an endpoint for our document. So Swagger obviously v1 because that's the name of our document, and we're going to call it swagger.json. So that will be the JSON file we'll be able to bring down, and it will enable people to build clients off that. So now we just give it a title, which we're going to call Web API. There's nothing exciting about the title, but we probably need to I do that kind of thing. Oh, another one, death packs. Thank you very much. Now I'm well off 13 now, 15, 30% of them away to my initial goal of 50 followers. Thank you so much. Really, really do appreciate that. Okay, so we've got the Swagger component set up, I believe. So let's give it a run and see if we can actually see the Swagger document. So if we navigate to Swagger, spell it right. Yeah, there we are. So that's our Swagger document. We've got our Web API, which is the specification that we're working on. Here's the title. Here's the location of the JSON endpoint. It is, and that will give us some more information. And here's our actual API. So we've got a launch API and we've got a getter on there. Doesn't do anything at the moment. We've got some things we can send. So for example, we can send a string. It's going to give us a string back. It will return us a code 200 success, and the no parameter set. So what we're going to do is set all that kind of stuff up next. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take a quick break to get a refill on my drink, and I'll be right back in a couple of minutes. So I'll see you soon. Okay, I'm back and refreshed. Another sip of this drink. Very dry work, talking and trying to code at the same time. Okay, so we've set up Swagger. I want to come back to this this controller now. So as you can see, we decorated this controller class with a couple of attributes here. The first is defining a route. So this is saying that the route I'm going to be using here has the word API slash and then the name of the controller, in this case the launch controller. And we also have a decorator here which is defining it as being an API controller. So these give it a number of kind of attributes and configuration and also some behaviors behind the scenes. This kind of convention of using these decorators I find really useful, and you'll see in a moment that it actually does help quite a bit when we're working with Swagger. So what we're going to do is just give you an example of using the decorators and the attributes to give more information to the Swagger document, which means that people who then interrogate the Swagger document and also the JSON file which you can create, they get more kind of rich information and they build more reliable clients because they actually know what to expect, and we're defining what our API can return. So first thing I want to do is just to make sure that we define that our controller is going to bring back JSON. So up here on the actual class itself, because all of our action results are going to in the end going to bring back JSON. We need to add a produces attribute in brackets. Then we're going to give the type, so application plus JSON. So that's what we're going to be returning from the controller, and that means that rather than being XML or JSON, we're actually defining that we're going to bring back only JSON, and then any clients will be configured that way out of the box without people having to choose between XML or JSON. XML, I find it such a pain these days compared to JSON. I know there are other markup languages that have come out, YAML and all this kind of stuff, but I do find JSON pretty intuitive, a lot less verbose than XML. XML seems such a bad idea these days, even though I guess when it first came out it was kind of hailed as being the saviour of everything. But when they had to have things like XPath and that to actually walk through the structure of XML, I started to lose interest really. Yes, JSON. It's probably old hat these days as well now, isn't it? But my company, for example, which we have to write queries against Dynamics 365 in an XML query format. It's a thing called Fetch XML, which is what D365 uses internally. We are moving to the cloud version from on-premise into the cloud up in Azure, and because it's in the cloud, there isn't a database that we can access, and so we're having to convert all of our link to SQL connectors over to using Fetch XML, and it's such a pain. You can have nice link statements, nice link expressions, and chain your link together with the SQL connectors, but XML, yeah, finding it a bit of a pain. TOML, I've not really come across TOML. Your Snable. I'll have a look at that later. Okay, so let's we've defined that we're going to be bringing back JSON anyway, so we're actually telling Swagger that that's what we're going to produce, and so when people build their clients off Swagger, then that will be defined for us. Okay, so I think what we're going to do is just quickly revisit our launch model I'm just going to put an ID in here. So we're going to play around a bit with this model, because it's not really what we're going to be using in the end. But I just want to be able to get some data out of it so you can see it working. Okay, so we're going to have an ID, and in a launch controller, when we send out HTTP GET request, we're going to actually be providing an ID. So we define that we're going to get an ID. What have I missed? Oh, yeah. You're not on the outside. Okay, so yeah, get our curly brackets in the right place. So we're saying that we're going to be appending an ID. The get's going to send an ID for us. So what are we going to actually produce out of this request? Well, what we can do is we can assume it's going to work and produce a response of 200. So produces response type 200, and with this with the 200, we're going to send back a launch, aren't we? So what we can say is we can define the type of the object that's going to come back, and that's going to be a type of, and it's a launch. So type of. So does your typing go go to pot as well as when you're streaming? I'm finding it quite hard, I must admit. But I guess when I get to your level and have done as many streams as you have, it should be relatively easier. Bad to worse, yeah. It's like when you're doing a live share code review, and you're typing away, and it's absolute garbage. So that's what I'm feeling like at the moment. Okay, so we define that we're actually gonna produce a launch when we send a 200 response back. Okay, so let's have a look at our action result here. So we're not going to be sending an IEnumerable back, we're going to be sending a launch out of this, and we're going to be getting an ID in, which is a string. That's find our signature. So now what we'll do is we'll simply build a what we'll do is create a little private method down here, just so we're going to create some test data. Okay, so we launch. So we'll have one launch A, launch alliance, have a launch vehicle of 5, and also have a mission. Mission be that, and a launch date. What should we have the launch date? Let's say it's going to be, string is it? February 3rd. We'll just get something back for now. My notes where we want to go with this. So it isn't easier. Yes, thanks, Gareth. That's really encouraging. So okay. So we want to return. Let's fire it up and have a look. No, it's that I think when I've gone, if I manage to get as long as Dev Chatter, he's just kind of very relaxed. And Jeff Fritz is great, isn't he? He's got such a natural manner. Not sort of think I'm quite a natural broadcaster. But I think it'll get easier the more we do this. So let's have a look at what I will bring back. So launch. Yeah, so there's our JSON coming back. If we now go and look at so that's our launch ID 1, Delta 5, ULA mission, blah blah blah. Okay, so let's go and have a look at the Swagger for that now. So here you can see it's telling us the kind of pattern that we're going to need to use. It gives us the model we're going to get back. So it says this is the JSON we're going to get back, and we can actually now try it out. So see we've got an ID that's required, and we're going to get a response, and we're going to get a 200 response, which is going to give us this model back. So we try it out. So it's asking for an ID. Obviously, it doesn't matter what we put in. We can now execute that. And what do we get? Yep. So we get our response back. So you can see with Swagger, you want to get a kind of a unit testing framework as such. This is what I tend to use this for, is to say to my test team, you don't have to test the whole application when I make a change to the web API. You can start off by looking at Swagger and actually testing the API itself without the application being in place. And they find that quite useful, especially as we start to build up these kind of response codes, and they can kind of cause different types of responses and react to them. So that's looking quite good now. So let's okay. So we've got a response coming back. So when we rather than returning just get test data, we probably should return a proper HTTP response. And how you can do that, you can simply say return OK. So and not that. Now we're actually starting to make sure we're returning this 200 OK response, and we're starting to kind of adhere more closely to what a REST API should actually do. If you read up about REST APIs, it's quite tightly defined about how they should respond, and this is this new kind of way of working with the web APIs in .NET Core I find really interesting and so supportive of a more natural way of coding this stuff. We want to return an OK. It just happens to be packaged up with our model object, which is our package of data. Okay, so what we can say is that we're going to require authorization. We have to be a known person, a known client, before we can use our launch API. Now, what I want to do is to build out the authentication and authorization side before we build out the actual data side. I'm going to need to create a database, and what I think we'll probably use something like Dapper to access the database and bring and actually package the data up and send it back to our API. But in our original stream, the kind of thing I wanted to do was to show you how you can actually do authorization and authentication without using complex third-party systems like Identity Server or even the dreaded ADFS, the bane of my life. So what we're going to do is actually introduce JWT bearer tokens. Now, these are all supplied by NuGet packages once again. So what I'm going to do is to bring in a couple of NuGet packages, which should help us. So I think the main one we need is the JWT token package. Let's bring that in. There's a couple of other things we need to do with our username password kind of system we're going to be using. We're going to be using hashing to encode the passwords our end. It's going to be very simple. We're going to be using the app settings.json to hold our usernames and passwords, so it's not going to be ultra secure from that point of view, but it's just to demonstrate what you can do. Obviously you keep your usernames and passwords in the database, and we'll move to that as part of a future stream. But for now we just need to try and get this thing so that we get some kind of authorization and authentication built into it. So once again, let's go back to our manage NuGet packages, and this time I'm going to. The first thing we need to do is actually bring in an authentication module for ASP.NET Core for JWT bearer tokens. So this is going to be a Microsoft package, a Microsoft ASP.NET Core. This is where a lot of the functionality lives. So everything's very modular in ASP.NET Core. You're not getting a monolithic dump of stuff you're never going to use. You're actually bringing in the NuGet packages to do what you need. So we want some kind of authentication, so we start off typing authent. See what we get. Authentication. Okay, so JWT bearer, there we are. That's the one we want. So this is quite a popular package. 15 million downloads for this one. So let's install this. And the other thing we want is an identity model. Wanna high. You hate VS? Never mind. I don't. Do use VS Code sometimes. Tend to use it for non-C# programming. But what I want to do, as this is a beginner-friendly stream, I didn't want to give you too many options. So just downloading the community edition of Visual Studio ahead of time is the thing to do, really, to follow along with this stream. We'll use Visual Studio Code at a later date, but I'm not looking to do that quite in this stream. So yeah, I think VS is pretty fantastic. It does have a few kind of niggly things, but I'm starting to put a lot of my bad experiences with Visual Studio down to extensions. The big extension I use at work is ReSharper, and a lot of my team are starting to turn it off. We get a lot of slowdown, weird kind of errors, and people are putting it down to ReSharper. I'm not sure if it is ReSharper. If you want something really lightweight, then yeah, Visual Studio Code is probably the way to go. Lots of extensions and plugins for that to help code. But yeah, you can write all this in Notepad if you want to. It just gets a bit more difficult. Okay, so what was I saying? I lost my train of thought. Oh yes, we want an identity model. So we want system. So this is so we can have all our claims and like that. We'll use the claims for our authorization. So here we see a system identity model tokens JWT is where we're going to be using for the actual token. Let's bring that one in. Okay. Code Rush. Yeah. If you watch Code Rushed stream, which is quite the most amazing stream, he used obviously his product Code Rush is used very extensively in that stream. It looks extremely powerful. He's actually also testing out new functions on the stream, and you can see him provide feedback to his development team saying fix this or this is what happened. Quite interesting. It looks very, very powerful. Never used it. Wouldn't mind giving it a go. And Rider, that's the JetBrains IDE, isn't it? I've not used it. I've not really seen it. I think Dev Chatter may have used it on one of his streams. It didn't look appreciably different to Visual Studio, so yeah, I'm sure it's very good. And obviously, if it's built on the same technologies as ReSharper, it's probably very powerful as well with its refactorings. Yeah, Mark Miller's stream is it's not a stream that you're going to follow. I don't think. I personally don't really follow his coding. It's lots and lots of JavaScript, but his graphics are amazing. He's doing a Dungeons and Dragons project at the moment. Got blood splatters, and it's got these scrolls which unroll with all the character sheets on them, and it's got the most amazing graphics. He's got this game that you can play in his stream with these drones, the helicopter things which fly around the screen. His Mr. Announcer bot is like astonishing. Yeah, it's obviously got a lot of talent with the graphics side of things, which I simply haven't. I'm so envious. I mean, just to get some of the graphics for this stream, I actually commissioned some cheap artwork to be done for me. There's still some more to come, so hence there's a bit of a disparity in some of the graphics I'm using. I'm actually using one of the themes that comes with Streamlabs OBS. But yeah, look for the graphics on the stream to actually improve as we go through. Okay, so we've got our bits and pieces for JWT in there. So now we need to go and configure those. So once again, we're going to be using our startup class to do that. So we need to add authentication to our application because we haven't got anything in here to actually going to do that for us. So there's quite a lot of stuff that needs to go in here for us to set up our authentication. So we're going to go into configure services. Is here. Right. So the best place to put this, I guess, would be in between the MVC and the Swagger. Click it here. The services. We want to add authentication. So authentication there. Okay. So once again, we're going to need to provide some configuration to the authentication piece. So let's do that again. Once we set up our Lambda again, and the anonymous object. So we need to set up our what our authentication scheme is going to be. Oh, Ace Flameseer, thank you very much for the follow. 16. Well, I'm burning through this now. Thank you very much, Ace Flameseer. I do recognise you from Dev Chatter at least, maybe from elsewhere. But yeah, welcome to the stream. What we're doing at the moment is we're building a web API. Very simple web API. Doesn't do anything fancy yet. Simply returns a model which represents a upcoming rocket launch. It doesn't even do that at the moment. It simply returns a static object. But what I wanted to demonstrate on this stream is look at adding authentication and authorization to the web API. So it's a secure API, and we're going to be using JWT bearer tokens to do that. So I've just brought in the NuGet packages for JWT. Oh, North Macedonia! Wow, things indeed impressive. Okay, so we brought in the NuGet packages, and now we're just setting up the configuration. So as I said, we need to define what the authentication scheme is going to be. Now the default scheme is going to be the JWT bearers. So that's simply a string bearer. And we also need to define how we're going to challenge users. That's basically exactly the same default challenge scheme. This is also JWT bearer. Okay, so having that in, we actually need to add in the bearer tokens. Oh, Wanahai, thank you very much for the follow. 17 followers, thank you so much. I really appreciate my first proper episode getting such a good response, and it's very encouraging. I think I need encouragement, so thank you very much. Okay, so we're going to add the bearer token now. So add JWT bearer. Now, once again, we need to do some configuration. First thing, we're going to give it a name, which is going to be correspond to this name we gave here. Put that into there. Then we're going to have some options. So these options are going to be things like are we going to validate the issuer? Are we going to validate the audience? So when you set up the bearer, you can say who the issuer is and who the audience is, and have those kind of things configured. We're also going to limit the lifetime of the bearer token, and we're going to also supply a security key, which will be used to generate the token itself. So okay, so let's crack on with this configuration. So it's quite hard to remember all of the things, but the number of options. Once again, we set up one of these anonymous option objects, and the first thing we need to do is to set up what the validation parameters are going to be for our token. So options called token validation. Token validation parameters. Now we're going to get a new one of those. Okay, so new token validation parameters. Mouse control is going out the window now. Bring in that package. Okay, so token validation parameters. So this is where we're going to define some of the basic things we're looking to validate on the token. So there'll be a signing key. This will be generated by a secret code which we're going to create in a moment. So okay, so it's validate signing key, that to be true. So we're going to make sure that it's got a valid signing key. We're going to create an issuer signing key. So this is going to be a symmetric security key which we're going to create. Okay, so this is going to be a new symmetric security key, and we're going to bring in a secret. Okay, so I happen to know what we need to do here. We haven't got a secret yet. Do that in a second. So we need to make sure that we the encoding and get the bytes from the security key. Do UTF-8, get bytes. That's our secret. I can spell secret. So that's going to stay as an error for the moment. So what we'll do is just up above, find secret. Have everyone been using IntelliCode at all? I find that absolutely brilliant. Trained it on my code and it all seems to know what I'm going to use, so it brings my choices after you press dot to the top. Very, very clever. Okay, so we got that. Now there's some other things we can validate. We can validate the issuer and the audience. We're not going to do that in our case. So validate issuer equals false. Validate audience false. So you can play around with those kind of settings if you wish. What we do want to do is validate the lifetime of token. The other thing we need, oops, true. So in order to validate the lifetime, what we're going to have to do is obviously compare times and dates on different machines. So standard kind of thing to do is to accept a difference in time between the server which created the token and the server which is consuming the token. And this is called a clock skew. It's basically a tolerance. And we're going to set a tolerance of 5 minutes. So if anyone's used ADFS, 5 minutes is what they use, which is why I'm going to use 5 minutes here. So any difference in time between a consumer and the creator of the token is going to not going to count if it's within 5 minutes. 5 minutes out. As soon as it's 1 second over 5 minutes, then you get an error and it won't validate. So let's set the clock skew up. This is going to be a time span 1 minute, 5 minute that. Fair enough. Okay. So we got this secret. So we're going to build this security key from a secret. So what we're going to need to do is to have a secret somewhere. Now, obviously, in a real system, you wouldn't keep these things solely in a app like JSON. These kind of things live up in the in Azure, in Key Vault, or they can live in your database or whatever. But we're going to put our secrets really into here. Now, I could use user secrets, but I want you to be able to see them because it's only a toy system. It's not a real system. It's never going to be deployed live anywhere, but it does give you the idea. So we're going to create a token secret. Is the clipping a thing of the past now, guys, or am I still clipping occasionally? You're just not telling me. Okay, so what we're going to need now is a long random string. So I think we can probably pop onto internet and find somewhere that will give us a long random string. Let's generate random. Thing of the past of the clipping. Apparently, I was suffering from quite a bit of clipping, so I've played around with the noise gates and also my kind of position. I'm having to kind of lean quite close to the mic. I've got a brand new mic. It's a blue Snowball. Couldn't afford the Yeti. And I've got one of these. If you do get a mic similar to this or to a Yeti, whatever, these extensible arms are really quite good. So I'm able to kind of stretch it closer to me. So it's actually sitting right in front of my face at the moment. So hopefully that's helping. So very strong password. Yeah, here we go. So one of these things will do. WPA 504-bit key. So we'll have that. Nice long key. Just pop that into the. Oops. Seem to copy it. Go back and grab it. Control. Do it. Yeah. A long random string of. Now back in the startup now, what we can do is use the configuration to pull that in. So let's configuration object. We've already got one. Yeah, put all this directly in from the configuration object. And we will eventually use the iOptions kind of thing and have them the configurations put into classes. But yes, Shield Stable. Well, actually, I'm officially it's from the black hole Cygnus X1, just outside the Event Horizon. But that's just code for Reddit, just outside Birmingham in England. So yeah, so my accent is decidedly Brummy. So I just kind of make out that our space station is staffed by Brummies. Why wouldn't it be? So we're going to get the token secret out of the. So I call it token secret. Spelling mistakes. Bring it back in here. Okay, so we've set up some authentication there. We actually need to grab a token in order to kind of feed it back. So we kind of come into half 10, starting to think that we should be wrapping up fairly soon. Let's go for a little bit longer and see if we can get a little bit more of this done. I'm not sure I'm going to get into a position to actually build the test client and show you it working, perhaps, but probably get the idea. So yeah, so we're going to need another controller. What we're going to have to do is have an endpoint where people can go to and they can get a token. And they'll get the token by providing a username and password eventually. But for a start off, we'll just give anyone who asks for one a token. Let's create a new controller. Yeah, the break is looking like a good idea. I had to pop off and get a drink a bit earlier, but yeah, a couple of hours is probably about my maximum. I know that some people go on for an awful lot longer, and Jev chatters us sometimes as well. It's really good when you've got lots of things going on in chat, kind of spreads out the time, and you don't have to kind of fill a lot of time in with actually writing loads and loads of code. In fact, a lot of the best streams find that not so much code gets written, but a lot of ideas get kind of passed around on the chat, and that's what I enjoy. You did 6 hours once, Gareth. 6 hours. Was that an F# stream? Hours. That's some going. You need some stamina there, but you had plenty of breaks. That sounds a long time. Mind you, once you get into the swing, I think if you really kind of heads down coding, on the bot, which is currently running, if you're interested in, there's not an awful lot of commands in there yet. There is a text adventure game in there based upon Colossal Caves. I don't know if you've probably heard of the Colossal Caves. It's when I was at university, we used to sneak into the computer room on the mainframe and play Colossal Caves. You had 30 minutes of computer time to play it, so I had to kind of memorize a lot of the tricks and traps and the layouts of the cave. So yeah, I've got an implementation of that one building in the bot, and I can spend hours and hours on that. So it was an F# stream. Yeah, I know your streams. Yeah, they do not go everywhere. Sorry, Gareth. I've got Nightbot wound up to its most aggressive, so it will. Oh, so you just tried commands? Yes, it's help. Help is the going off on tangents. I enjoy your tangents, so I particularly enjoy it when you get the graphic tablet out and start drawing pictures. That's probably my favourite part of the stream, because then I start to understand what on earth it is you're doing. It's always a good thing. Okay, so what we're going to do is just grab a few things off the launch controller. Grab don't want the producers JSON, but we'll just grab the. I'm a great believer in paste, but it can lead you into great trouble, so I wouldn't copy paste what I do. Okay, so we're going to inject the configuration into this. So let's create some private variables. Want an I configuration. Oops. My configuration. Proper using statement. I want one of those. going to we're going to want the security key that we've created as well. So we're going to, this is a type symmetric security key. Begin that as well. That key. Okay. So we're going to need to have a constructor as well so that we can inject the configuration into it. Yeah, so we're using dependency injection. Do that. So this is constructor dependency injection. In the past, I've used an awful lot of autofac, and I'm pretty used to the way that works. So it's taken a little while to get used to injecting with the constructor, but actually I think it's the right way to go. I prefer it, even though at work we still use an awful lot of autofac. So let's create a new token controller. We're going to inject in a configuration. Okay. So I use this underscore for private variables in a class. Other people don't like that, but it's just a convention that we've got in our team. Our coding standards fit on two sides of A4. I think any more than that, I lose interest. But there's some basic naming conventions in there. One of which is underscore as a leading character for private variables in a class. So why that's there, in case you're wondering. And so we can also populate the key. Key is going to be a new symmetric security key. So this is basically the same code we had before when we were setting up the JWT bearer token. That what I'll do is I'll just snip across and grab that piece of code from the startup. Okay, and then we just bring in using a statement. Then we need to read the key, don't we? So do is read it directly out of the configuration. And it was called token secret, I think. Can't spell now. I have some patterns of misspelling words, and one of them, every single time I type it, I misspell it, is change, which I always spell Chagny, and I can't break myself out of it. If I do start writing the word change, then you'll know it'll come out as being Chagny. MEF, I've not come across MEF. Autofac, definitely done a lot of autofac. Powerful, flexible. I've actually also ripped out the CI controller that comes with core and put autofac in there, but I did regret it. Actually, created a .NET standard library which enabled you to switch between two, so you could either define you wanted. I've got a service layer at work, which is all instantiated through the DI, and the .NET Core library we've got, .NET standard library we've got for it, enables you to say I want to use Microsoft DI or Autofac DI, and I must admit I use I use the MS version quite a lot these days. Yes, custom without first writing custom and then deleting the ER. Yes, yeah. It's strange how you get these kind of patterns of misspelling, and I think it's. I don't know if it's something about the way you type. And I'm a two-finger typer. I'm not a typist, um, but I always get that spelling wrong. And also, you'll notice when I type on streams in the chat, there's some quite common um, spelling mistakes, and it's usually transpositions or letters close together. Anyway, let me crack on with this. I'm rambling an awful lot here. Okay, so what we're going to want is we go on a create method, and what this is going to do is going to be a post. So let's first decorate the method. I've got a cat meowing outside as well. It won't be a cat stream. The cat won't come anywhere near us, but meowing outside. And we want to define what the route's going to be here as well. So this is going to be just /token. So we're not going to go through the API route. We're going to go directly to a token route. And we're going to pass in a username and password in the body of our post request. So we're going to have we're going to pass in as a JSON object, and we're going to call it on a user. Bring this in, soft, and this is going to live in the body. So we need to decorate this parameter with a from body attribute l core. We don't net core that this is going to be living in the body, and that's where you should extract it from. Okay, so I imagine that our user is just going to be a simple dictionary. It's going to be username and password. So can do here user data. We're going to just convert that JSON into an object, and it's going to be, as I said, I think we'll just stick to it being a dictionary. And it's going to be of type string. Just a quick look at chat. Rambling is good. Yes, well, yes, good to ramble. Should ramble more, perhaps. I do. Oh, thank you for the comment. I'm trying to fill the space up, and that is really quite difficult. And I'm sure you know, dead air is very embarrassing. And okay, with or without the, yeah, we can do that. We can do the demonstration of the two body and all that kind of stuff at some point. I just want to try and get to a point where we've got the ability to create a token, and then kind of sign off, and we'll have a part 2 to this, maybe even a part 3 when we start to develop this. So let's just try and get cover done. Oops, what am I doing? Okay, so let's just extract the username and password out of this dictionary. User data, and we want username, and obviously got to send one of these objects into the method, but let's not worry about that too much. Data, and this is going to be the password that lives inside that. There we go. Okay. So eventually we're going to be making sure that it's a proper username and password and all that good stuff there. But for the moment, we'll just ignore the fact we've passed the username password in. And what we'll do is we'll do a simple validation on it. So we'll say if is valid, name word. Then we'll go on to actually generate our token. But what we'll do is just create a method here. I did to add valid. That's what I wanted to say. What I'm going to do at the moment is return true from this. And we'll come in and actually in the next stream we'll do some work with hashing with random salts so that we're not vulnerable to kind of brute forcing rainbow table kind of attacks. I've got some code which I'll hold my hand up. I didn't write the code. I've got some code which will give us some nice nice hashes with random salts in them, so that'll be interesting to work with. Okay, so we need to generate a token if the username and password is valid. Let's create a generate token method, and what we're going to do is pass the username in there. And the reason we're going to pass the username in is that will be one of the username will be one of the claims that we use. Also, we're going to have the ability to define in our app settings.json what claims different users have. So it could be that they're able to read data from the API, but may have an admin who can actually write data through the API and actually update the database. Okay, so we generate a token. We need to create that method. Generate that method. Okay. Now we're going to create some claims, but they're going to be kind of generic claims. So the first thing we're going to do in our generate token is actually build a list of claims. So we're going to add these to these claims, but we're going to initially just create a generic set, including the name of the user, and give it a role. Okay, so we want a claims to be set up. So we want a new list of claims. Bring claim in from our security we've been importing, and I think so. The first claim is going to be the user's name, because we can use that later on to respond back to people by name if we have to. So let's create a new claim. And if you're not familiar with claim-based or authentication, claims are what we use really for determining what a person can do. So for the authorization aspects of the security model we're going to implement. Okay, so a new claim. The type of claim we want to create is going to be a name. It's going to be the user's name, and that is simply username passed in. As I say, we'll get to having more complicated claims time. So the next claim, we want to give it this this user a role. So claim types again. Does anyone think claim looks spelt wrong? It's weird. Role. So we're going to create a new role, which is going to be client. So you can think of this as being perhaps your mobile app, whatever. semicolons in, it's not common. And have another claim. So we're going to introduce a different type of claim now. This is actually a JWT claim. And what we need to look at is expiry times. So there's a couple of times we need to actually add into here. First one is going to be when the token's been created, the creation time, and then we want its expiry time. So how long is this token actually going to last? I've got to try and remember this. So it's these are JWT claims, and we probably need to bring in the JBearer token libraries here. Yes, I'm going to try and remember what. Don't need tasks. So it was system dot model dot tokens dot JWT. That should get up here. JWT. Yes, there we go. So it's a registered claim name is what we want. So it's a weird name, NBF, and that's going to be new date time offset and date time now. This is the creation date and time, and we need to represent that in Unix format. So there's a 2 Unix time seconds use, and then we need to have it as a string. Okay, so that's one of the JWT claim types, and we're going to copy that line so I don't have to remember that, type all of that again. There's another one which is the expiry, the XP, and this is a bit simpler in that it's date time now dot add days, and you can add many days as you want. I'm going to add 1 day, so that it's going to last 24 hours. But then what we can do is to when we define to the client how they should handle our token, we can say, you know, regenerate every 12 hours so that they never run out. If they do go over the 24 hours, then the token they've got saved in their database will be useless and have to regenerate it. Okay, so that should give us some claims to work with. Now, the best way of doing this, what we're going to do, we'll leave the custom claims that we're going to create for each user for next time. So we're going to need to generate a token now. So let's have a token variable. This is going to be a new JWT bearer token. So it's a JWT security token. Okay, so there's several parameters. So the first one is a header. So tokens have a header, JWT header, and this it's going to have we need to put the signing credentials on top of this. So we bring in a new signing credentials, and this is going to have our secret key in there. And we need to define the algorithm that we're going to use. It's going to be a SHA-2561, so security algorithm, and we'll use the HMAC. HMAC256. 256. That should be good. And so we know that's the header. Now we're going to define the payload. The payload is simply going to be the actual claims. So a new AWT payload, the claims into there. Good. Be our basic AWT token built, but it's not actually a token quite yet. We need to wrap it up in a well, not exactly wrap it up, but we need to actually write the token out, and we do that using a token security handler. So AWT token, this is the actual token that we're going to use. That's a new security token handler, and off that we just call write token. That's in it, alt above, and you're going to return that. So what I'm not going to return it immediately. We'll just put this in separate lines so that we can actually stick a debugger on there. And we've got this as turning void. Obviously, it's got to return. Okay. So we generated the token. So for that, and we're going to need to return something out of this method because that's why it's complaining. It's underscoring there. So next thing to do is to just wrap it up as an object. So we're going to return new object result, and simply put the token inside that. Okay, not all code pass. Okay, so and what we'll do, if the username and password is invalid, we're going to return a bad request. So a bad request, and that's a 400, isn't it? So what we can do here is define once again the response types that we're going to produce out of this method. So produces response type, and that's going to be 200 if it's successful, and 400 is going to be our bad. This is all documentation that's going to be used by Swagger to help the users of our API to understand what's going on and what they need to send, and have the responses it can bring back. Okay, so build that and see what happens. So we got 5 souls still hanging on with me. We're coming up to 11 o'clock. So I think we'll just get this, see if this actually works, and then we'll call it a day. I'm not 100% sure the next stream time. It should be fairly soon, maybe earlier in the day. The reason why I say that, and the reason why you've got no webcam, by the way, just probably didn't explain this, is that I'm actually sat in my front room. Luckily my wife's out at the moment, so I'm not disturbing her. But normally, obviously there's the TV on, I couldn't possibly stream, successfully from oops, not that bagger, successfully from this position. Unfortunately my office upstairs is an office for work, so more difficult to do it there. So we can try this out. Here you can see our new post endpoint token. You can see that it reduces either a 400 or a 200. The 400 actually produces a little model here with more information about the failure in it. We'll just try it out. We're going to send in a username and password pair. So username B. Password. Password. Why wouldn't it be? And you can see here's the response, and there's add bearer token. So that's what we're going to be capturing and sending that back in the in our requests, in our HTTP requests, back to the API in order to initially authenticate, but also our claims will be in there, and we'll be able to authorize use of various endpoints based upon those claims. So I'm going to stop there with a bit of success. Later on, I'm going to push this up to GitHub. So there is a GitHub repository, and I will let you know what that is in good time when it's all kind of configured. Meanwhile, there is a Discord associated with Codebase Alpha. It's going to be a bit quiet initially, but do pop over at that link and join me over there. Eventually, as the stream kind of builds up some momentum, we might get some good conversations going on over there. And also, if you have any questions about bearer token concept and how we're going to kind of progress this API, please do ask. If you've got any ideas how we can do it, excellent. I'll give a shout out to Gareth and his stream, because he's stuck with us all this way, and I'm very, very appreciative of all you guys who've stayed and watched, and especially those who've followed. It's been greatly appreciated. We're now to 34% of our way to our goal, which is 50 followers, and a very generous amount of time. But I'm not taking anything for granted. My voice may be the most awful, boring voice, and my stream might not be the best stream yet. But I'll thank you very much, Gareth. It's very much appreciated. Really want to try and build this and try and make it a bit different from the streams that you might come across elsewhere. So Gareth has kind of found his niche within the kind of F#, Rust, and dare I say more niche technologies, especially on coding, live coding streams. I wanted to try and bring in some beginner-friendly streams, by which I don't mean learn to code streams, but just maybe a subject you're interested in, like creating a web API, and just taking that little bit further. So creating a web API is simply a matter of a couple of clicks on a Visual Studio and it'll build you one. But adding things like Swagger, adding things like authentication and authorization are the kind of things that it doesn't do. C++, C++. I'd like to see some modern C++. I've done a bit of coding in C++, old C++ really, and C. I did a lot of work several years ago now with a play-by-mail game called Atlantis, and I rewrote some parts of that, which was all in C++. And I've got to say it's mind-bending, but yes, some modern C++. We're very interested to see it, but I don't know how you're going to approach it, Gareth. It would be nice to see that from a not exactly a beginner's point of view, but an introductory method. So, oh right, someone, David X9. Oh, I must throw him a follow and get onto his stream then. So I was on YouTube as well. Okay, I tend to use YouTube at work because I'm a bit more kind of wary about Twitch streaming, watching Twitch streamers at work. But YouTube is fairly common for people to watch informational videos, instructional videos on that. So that'd be really good. Okay, guys, thank you so much for joining me. It's now past 11 o'clock. I've got work in the morning, so once again, I will give you my appreciations, and we'll see you on the next stream. And yeah, you'll be notified on if you're a follower. Get on Discord, and I'll post on there, and also I'll post on Gareth's Discord and DevChatter Discord when the next stream will be, and hopefully build up the regular schedule. Cheers then, and good night to everyone.